faithful. Thank you, Lord.
Good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. What a great privilege it is to share God's Word together again today. We find ourselves in 1 Kings chapter 6 today, and we finally got there. Solomon is building a temple. Remember way back in Exodus, God instructed Moses to build a tabernacle, and that was going to be the place where the presence of God dwelt. And it's been hundreds of years, a journey through the desert for 40 years, a conquering of the promised land through the power of God, a monarchy established, and now a monarchy in the hands of King Solomon. And God has said, build me a temple. And that's where we are today. So let me show you. I want you to see this. This is on the left, Solomon's temple. Okay, just compare it to what Herod is going to build for the New Testament times, all right? Herod's temple is much bigger, all right? You can easily see that. But Solomon's temple was built in 957, 4 years into his reign. Okay, what you're going to see here, well, let me just show you that temple. There's his temple a little more close up. Built in 957, it's going to be destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon, in 587 BC when Nebuchadnezzar rolls into Jerusalem and wipes it out as part of God's plan to exile the Jewish people out of the promised land due to their flagrant, persistent disobedience. But we see that this temple has many elements similar to the tabernacle. In fact, in some ways it's a model of the tabernacle, only much bigger, and this one's permanent. We're not carrying this anywhere. But let me just run you through the verses that describe the construction. We're going to go kind of fast through that, and then we'll talk about a little more. In 1 Kings 6:1, in the 480th year after the Israelites had come out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. You remember in chapter 5, he was accruing all the materials necessary. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long and 20 wide and 30 high. It's a rectangle, just like the tabernacle. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple. That is 20 cubits and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow, clerestory windows in the temple. Oh, by the way, a cubit. How long is a cubit? It's normally measured by the arm of a man from the shoulder to the tip of the finger. So what would we say? Maybe 3 feet or so, something like that. Maybe a little more, a little less. Anyway, okay, so there's narrow windows, however, clerestory windows. There we go. Maybe that's how you say it. Against the walls of the main hall and inner sanctuary, he built a structure around the building in which there were side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. Very interesting construction process there. The entrance to the lowest floor was on the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level and from there to the third. So he built the temple and completed it, roofing it with beams and cedar planks. He built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits. They were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. The word of the Lord came to Solomon. Oh, here we go. So this is the basic outline of what was constructed. We'll see as the passage moves forward that it took him 7.5 years or so to have this all finished. But now the word of the Lord comes to him. So now God interjects in this construction project. And what does God have to say? As for this temple you are building, excuse me, if is what? We've been over this. If is a condition. You meet this condition, then the next sentence is going to apply to you. You don't meet this condition, the next sentence will not be applicable, all right? If you follow my decrees, if you carry out my regulations, if you keep all my commands, if you obey them. That's the condition. Obedience, faithfulness to what God has called us to. Then God is going to obligate himself to something. If you do all these things, what is he going to do? He says, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to David your father. All right, the kingdom is going to be perpetually in place if you obey. And I will live among the Israelites, and I will not abandon my people, Israel. All right, again, the tabernacle is built to symbolize and create that place where the presence of God dwells among men. Now the temple the same way. God says, look, stay obedient to me, and I'm going to live among you. Remember, at the end of the book of Revelation, this is the end of it all, where God is living among those who follow him. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. Nice, one line, done. He lined its interior walls with cedar boards and paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling. He covered the floor of the temple with planks of pine. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards from floor to ceiling to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. You remember, right, that the tabernacle also had a holy place, right? So the temple is now modeling that to that degree. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with gourds and open flowers. Everything was cedar. No stone was to be seen. You remember yesterday we saw that King Hiram is ordering the Sidonians to send cedar to Solomon for this construction. So that's what they're using it for, the interior of the temple. He prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The ark is very symbolically important in terms of declaring God's presence and God's law in that place. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold. Wow. And he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold, the most precious of metals. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. And in the inner sanctuary, he made a pair of cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. You remember that there were cherubim on the ark itself, covering the ark. Now there are cherubim in the sanctuary made of olive wood, 10 cubits high. Very high, right? So one wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing 5 cubits, 10 cubits from wingtip to wingtip. The second cherub also measured 10 cubits, for the two cherubim were identical in size and shape. The height of each cherub was 10 cubits. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. All right, so there's a very holy place where these cherub statues are placed. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. On the walls all around the temple in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer rooms of the temple with gold. And we're running at what? Almost $5,000 an ounce for gold in the modern day. Just think about how ornate this temple is. Just think about how precious this temple is and how no expense was spared to make it the best it could be. For the entrance of the inner sanctuary, he made doors of olive wood with 5-sided jambs, and on the 2 olive wood doors he carved cherubim, palm trees, open flowers, and overlaid the cherubim and palm trees with beaten gold. In the same way, he made 4-sided jambs of olive wood for the entrance to the main hall. He also made 2 pine doors, each having 2 leaves that turned in sockets. He carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them and overlaid them with gold hammered evenly over the carvings. And how beautiful this must have been. And he built the inner courtyard of 3 courses of dressed stone and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams. The foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid in the 4th year, in the month of Ziv. In the 11th year, this is how we get to 7.5 years, in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the temple was finished in all its details according to its specifications. He had spent 7 years building it. Now, just to bring you a little bit of understanding about what we're looking at here in terms of how the temple compares to the tabernacle, I want you to see from where I am, let's see, this way, yeah. That's where the entrance would be, right? The 2 pillars. There'd be the courtyard beyond, let's see, that way. Yeah, okay. That's where the courtyard is. The inner and the outer courtyard, okay. That's where the sacrifices are made. That's where the washing is done by the priest. That's where the washing of the animal parts is done out there. But when you get to the inside, it might be hard to see on your screens, but right about here we have golden lampstands. There's the table of showbread. There's the altar of incense. The Ark of the Covenant is all the way over there in the interior of the inner Holy of Holies. All right? The cherubim are there. Do you see where it says the veil? Do you remember when Jesus died, he hangs his head, he gives up his spirit, and what happens? In that moment, the veil is torn from top to bottom. In other words, that thing that blocks the common person from entering the presence of God is torn apart through the sacrifice of Jesus. At this stage of Solomon's temple, the only people, really the only person allowed behind that curtain is the high priest. And they would only let him go in there when a rope was tied around him in case God's anger burned against him for some reason and he died in service in the Holy of Holies. With the rope, they would pull him out, right? Because no one else would enter that place. But that gives you a glimpse of what's happening here in 1 Kings 6. And it's another thing to note for you, that God looks at this beautiful building and he is willing to allow his presence to be in this place and to receive the worship of his people in this place. But God is also willing to allow foreign invaders, pagans, to come destroy this place when the people don't fulfill the condition. We'll see Israel, unfortunately, fall away so harshly that God eventually brings this temple to the ground as an act of judgment as he sends his people into exile. We serve a loving God. We serve a God that wants us to worship him, but we also serve a God that is not going to tolerate evil in our lives. We need to look at ourselves and remove those things in our hearts and minds and behaviors that we know that God hates. Because despite how beautiful this is and functional and what a blessing it is to the people, God will remove it in a heartbeat as he sees the people refuse him, reject him, do what they want instead of what he wants. Let's don't make that mistake, church. God bless you. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood. It's Jesus.